played the Breath of the Wild. I haven't played the new one though.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't played the new one, but the Breath of the Wild is very, very good.
Let's see, you at 5.
What is happening, everybody? Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock. Apologies. So for the showdown slates, Live Before Lock is going to be 30 minutes, but YouTube time, it was set at 7 as opposed to 7:30. So apologies to all the people who have been sitting here waiting in the YouTube chat. Also for the people who may have been sitting and waiting over in the playback chat. But we're here now. We're live. Shout out to Chris Williams. We're already gifted 10 YouTube memberships right out of the gate here. Chris, we appreciate you a whole bunch. We're sponsored here by Better. If you guys want to sign up at Better, you can get a deposit bonus up to $500. Take advantage using the link that we have down there below. Eric, what's happening today? We got the start of the conference finals.
I mean, obviously tomorrow is my Super Bowl, and then I get to have it for multiple days. Trying to make trip plans to potentially get to that Game 5 next Thursday. Go work from Minneapolis on Wednesday and Friday, but go to a little basketball game that's going down. Hopefully that Game 5 on Thursday. I'm excited, but obviously this one's wild. When you're talking about minus 1,000 in the Eastern Conference Finals as a series price. Not normal stuff, Craig.
Has it come down? Because it was way above minus 1,000 last I looked.
Yeah, it was like minus 1,100 last time I looked. I'm just rounding.
Yeah, it is. Let's see. I'm just pulling it up on FanDuel to see what the serious prices are here. And minus 1,100 for the Celtics. Other side, plus 700 on the Indiana Pacers. I don't want to bet the Pacers at plus 700, but I don't think minus 1,100 is playable as a series price either.
I'm going to say probably no. That would be an unenjoyable experience. The amount of hold that they're able to have on both sides of that is just absurd. So Celtics, very, very heavily favored. Ended up putting a tiny play on 4-1 yet again. I think there is a chance Indy can maybe sneak a Game 3, Game 4. We have seen the Celtics drop back-to-back Game 2s in their first two series. I don't think that that's the likely outcome here, but I'm excited for this slate. I think it's a really, really good one.
All right, so let's go ahead and just get right into talking about let's talk about the captains to start, because to me, the biggest talking point on this slate, and it applies to both DraftKings and FanDuel, maybe even more so for FanDuel, we talk about the MVP/captain spot. There's so much ownership going to Jason Tatum, like 80% over on FanDuel, north of 50%, right around the 50% mark on DraftKings. And if you don't have Jason Tatum project for the most fantasy points in this game, you've clearly done something wrong. You should project for the most fantasy points. The problem I'm running into is it is nearly impossible to build unique lineups that have Jason Tatum in that multiplier spot. So if you're playing Jason Tatum on FanDuel and you're using the MVP spot, I think you have to leave a ton of salary on the table. Same goes for DraftKings, but at least for DraftKings with the multiplier, I feel like I could get different elsewhere in the captain spot. But Eric, I'm not anywhere near the 50% ownership the field is on Jason Tatum and the captain.
Yeah, I'm not either. It's frustrating. Oh, Jose Ramirez home run. That makes me happy. I am with you. I think that there's lots of reasons why that's the case. First off, their first two series, think about going from playing Miami and Cleveland into playing Indy, where we know we're going to be getting the pace, the 222 total, 221 total. It's reflective of all of that. For all intents and purposes, Tatum should be priced up more than where he is currently. Like, I know that he's expensive, but not relative to like other slates like a Jokic against Minnesota or anything. I mean, 11-2, you could probably ratchet that price up another K and it'd probably be justified here. We're going to see him more expensive, more than likely, come the series end. But I'm with you where I think getting away from him and the captain and just playing a lot in the utility, kind of my primary way of playing this slate. I want to get different. And if half the field's going to play one captain, especially with like the floor elevated up to $2,000 with some of these mid-range options, Derek White, Pascal Siakam, and then one guy that I'm going to be playing is the Nuke of the night. I'm comfortable playing more of those guys in the captain and letting all of the Tatum people have that. But there is no doubt that I understand why that ownership is there.
Yeah, and then also, if you guys have questions for us, hit me up in the Discord channel. I could answer those as we go here. And yeah, so for me, when I'm looking at my Tatum exposure, I've got so much more Tatum in the flex spot / utility spot than I do in the captain spot, where I'm about in line with the field on Jason Tatum in that flex spot. I've got him in 40% of lineups, but only 18% captain exposure. So really, really trying to differentiate when I'm looking at the multiplier spot. So here's the other part of this question then, Eric. If we do want to get away from Jason Tatum, if you guys are somebody who's playing cash games on FanDuel or DraftKings, yeah, go ahead and play Jason Tatum in the multiplier spot. Who do you think is the best pivot to get different off of Tatum in that multiplier, though?
I think it's probably twofold. The next guy that I have is Jaylen Brown. Obviously, they're pretty big favorites. And if you're going to get away from Tatum, I think the most likely outcome when you look at the points props that exist across the industry today, 24.5 points for Jaylen Brown, sitting right there, 2.5 assists. You know, you put in the rebound numbers in your spreadsheet, 6.5, 7.5 rebounds for him there. He's not terribly far off. I mean, Tatum is projected nearly, 10.5 rebounds, 29.5 points. So you're getting to Jaylen Brown. Part of that is also what else he gets you. I look at that, and I look at Tyrese Haliburton, who's somebody who is also pulling quite a bit, but I'm probably going to trim down some of the Tyrese Haliburton before we get to lock here as we talk through this, because the dupes are a little out of control with him. In the Sims tool, as I'm looking at it, I'm kind of unhearting some of those that exist. Lots of Tyrese Haliburton that's existing at the top of the Sims tool for me. I like the Jaylen Brown lineups that leave some salary on the table. I'm looking even like 49.5, 49.6. Not that it's going to do a crazy good job of getting away from some of the dupes, but I think Jaylen Brown probably the next most likely captain to end up optimal.
By the way, can you guys still hear echo from Eric? I had my speaker really close to my mic, which may have caused some echo. I just moved it back, so I think that should make it better.
There you go.
Let me know if it's still an issue over there. So if I'm looking, if I'm looking to get off of Jason Tatum, which I am in the multiplier spot, Jaylen Brown is my number one option. I also really like low ownership on Drew Holiday. 3% projected ownership for Drew Holiday in that multiplier spot. It's a really good individual matchup for him against Tyrese Haliburton. I also think there's potential chance for some of the core Celtics guys like Drew Holiday, like Derek White, to play more minutes in this series than they have in some of the earlier series. And it's just such low ownership. If I'm trying to find which player I think has the least amount of ownership for the most upside, it's Drew Holiday at 3% ownership for me. And it's just going to get you on such a different lineup build than what the rest of the field is on.
Don't mind that whatsoever. He is somebody who I'm on his points prop. I'm all right with Drew Holiday getting there as well. 5.7% ownership, though, in the captain right now. So I had a little bit higher as I'm looking at that in the Sims tool and the data hub. So there's that. I don't want to throw this guy out there right away because I do think he has the best matchup on the floor from the indie side of things. He will be the Nuke, and he's somebody that I have 15% of in the captain, but I'm almost just jamming entirely in the utility. So we'll talk about him a little bit later, but just keep that one in mind. I do like somebody else on the Pacer side there. Derek White, I don't mind, but again, he's somebody that at 8K, I'm probably with you. I think Drew Holiday, it makes sense that he's 1% difference. I'd rather play Drew Holiday, I think, in the captain spot as well. I do think this will also be a good series for Derek White for what it's worth. We've just seen him take on more of the offense. And I also am with you where I think some of these other guys like Cornette minutes, Hauser minutes, Pritchard probably pretty firmly in this rotation, no matter how things pan out. He's played well enough and obviously has some versatility out there. Cornette will play some backup five, but how much will be to be determined. I'm probably better off playing Drew Holiday in that captain as well. I don't have any Derek White in the captain.
Yeah, and I mean, if we're just looking once again, it's at who are the really, really low-owned plays that could differentiate us in the multiplier. I like Drew Holiday. That's more specific for DraftKings. If we're looking at FanDuel, then it would be Tyrese Haliburton, Jaylen Brown. It's really hard to go and say like, hey, I want to play Drew Holiday in the MVP spot on FanDuel because I don't think it's all that likely he scores the most fantasy points in the game. So FanDuel side of things, somebody, Tyrese Haliburton, Jaylen Brown. You can make a case for Pascal Siakam as well. I think those are the most reasonable ways to get off of Jason Tatum. Are there any cheapies, like super cheap players you're looking to potentially get to in that multiplier spot on DK?
Not really. TJ McConnell, I had one share of in my 40. Peyton Pritchard, I had one share. I ended up stripping that one away. I guess this is a series that's kind of interesting. I'm very interested to see what happens with the Obi Toppin minutes, Miles Turner minutes. I think both of them interesting talking points. I think it's just going to be a true center split there. I've got 17 minutes for Obi Toppin, 31 for Miles Turner at the moment. That's enough for Miles Turner to end up in everything I'm doing. But don't think I'm going to be going to any Ben Shepherd. TJ McConnell, probably the one guy down there. He's played really, really well. And now we're starting to see some overlap. I know it's a different series. So a game one, you look at some of these matchups, things might play out a little bit differently. But with Drew Holiday, Derek White, Peyton Pritchard on the floor, I do think TJ McConnell has played well enough. He's been a 1.2 DraftKings points per minute player in these playoffs, 1.28 during the regular season. And this is also a much better series for the Pacers in terms of fantasy than what the Knicks series was. I suppose you can look at it one of two ways. Obviously, the Knicks they were the walking wounded by the end of that thing. And so the matchup probably looked better than what it was during the regular season at times. But TJ McConnell is somebody that, if I were playing more than 40 lineups, I would probably be making some kind of a stand on the captain with it. But I've got one share that's there. I'm probably going to give him a little bit of a boost, maybe get to like 3 or 4 lineups for him. But for me, it's going to be, Tatum is just behind Jaylen Brown, 25% Jaylen Brown there, 15% Jason Tatum, 15% of another guy, and then kind of falls off. I'm pretty flat at the bottom.
Let's get to, we got a couple of super chats that are here waiting for us. So let's answer those. No questions in Discord now. So let's answer the couple of super chats. Then we can do the nuke of the night here, Eric. And then we'll talk about some of the rest of the flex options that we have for the slate. But first super chat here is from Ace of Spade. Ace of Spade wants to know, well, first says, welcome back, Greg. Didn't exactly go anywhere. I am going to be, Josh is going to be out for a little bit, dealing with a family thing. So if you guys don't see Josh around, just know that that is what's going on. So I'm covering all this content for now. I'm doing NBA strategy show in the morning, and it's only one game slate. So I put up, it was like a 20-minute strategy video. I went through the Sims, walked through both DraftKings and FanDuel. Also did a giveaway on it. So if you guys are looking for basketball content in the morning, go check those out. But anyway, Ace of Spades said, welcome back, Greg. And then DK tiers, best 2 options. There are tiers for the 2-game slates here. And
oh, Lord.
Listen, if we look at tier 1, have you looked at this at all, Eric? If not, totally fine.
I've not at all. I didn't know it was there.
So tier 1, it's Luka by a mile. Jason Tatum, second best option there. But tier 1, I think Luka's the guy you want to be going with. In tier 2, I'm going to be saying Karl Anthony Towns 1, Jaylen Brown 2. In tier 3, Rudy Gobert 1, Derek White 2. In tier 4, I'm going to be going with Mike Conley 1, Al Horford 2. And then in tier 5, man, tier 5 is tricky. There's a lot of guys that are really, really close. I'll go Andrew Nembhard 1, and then Naz Reid 2. And then in tier 6, where we just have the shittiest of shit players, where it's like just end of the bench sort of guys, Luke Cornett 1, Isaiah Jackson 2. That's what's happening in tier 6, Eric. Those are the kinds of players that we're talking about. Like the other guys in here are like Jalen Smith, Kyle Anderson, Tim Hardaway Jr. So Luke Cornett 1, Isaiah Jackson 2 for me there, Ace of Spade. The next super chat that we have here to get to, it is coming to us from Chris Williams. He says, having one of my favorite duos back for the NBA. Hit the like button, people. Bring yourself some good karma. It's true. For every single time that somebody hits the like button, they are slightly more likely to win a GPP today. So do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And then Sean Jeezy says, the dynamic duo is back. If you guys had to get to somebody off the board in 150 max, who is it? And he's giving us some examples like Jalen Smith, Xavier Tillman. So Eric, if we're looking at one of these players who maybe we're looking at it from a blowout perspective, that's a potential for, I mean, really any game in this series with the Boston Celtics going to be somewhere around double-digit favorites every game. But who's your off-the-board play that you'd be looking to get to potentially in the flex?
God, I don't know about like crazy off the board. I do have some of these guys that it's ending up with 2K. Not that I misspoke. I just kind of said what I was trying to verbalize incorrectly. Obi Toppin and Miles Turner have started to share the floor a little bit here. It's been Isaiah Jackson who's been completely absent of Miles Turner. So anytime Miles Turner isn't out there at the center spot, you're going to look at Isaiah Jackson. But I mean, Isaiah Jackson is pretty damn popular. So I don't want to just say Isaiah Jackson 3K, that's the dude. But Isaiah Jackson 3K, that's the dude. He's 15.8% owned. The Sims is getting to me quite a bit of him. And I have no problem playing Isaiah Jackson and Miles Turner and just saying that I'm getting a majority of those center minutes. You go back to last game, completely different series, but you did see Obi Toppin as the first center to check in there. I guess it was Miles Turner that checked out And then it was just like the last couple of minutes that Obi Toppin played on the floor at the 5. Then Isaiah Jackson checked in. But for the most part, you're not going to get any overlap between Turner and Jackson. And yet, I think it's just fine in showdown in a 1-game slate to just end up with a lot of both. And I have a lot of both in my lineups.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that there isn't. I know you'd referenced that Isaiah Jackson is picking up some ownership. It's for a 1-game slate, though. I mean, he's barely over 10% owned. I think he's a very easy guy to get overweight to. Now, in the nature of Sean's question, I don't think he's even looking for somebody who's 10% owned. So, I mean, the lowest owned guy I have in lineups is Sam Hauser, projected for 5% ownership. But it's not like he's any kind of core play. But listen, if this is a game where Boston wins via blowout, I do think Sam Hauser would be getting himself some extra playing time. I know they went really deep to the bench in some of their blowouts last round, but maybe this is an opportunity where if they're typically going to be playing the starters a little bit more, and Sam Hauser, somebody, if there's an injury, might have to step into the rotation. Perhaps they have to give Sam Hauser blowout run. So my answer in terms of somebody I'm actually getting a meaningful amount of exposure to and am well overweight to the field to, I'm going to say Isaiah Jackson. But if you're talking about somebody who's just like a crazy low-owned guy that's only projected for a couple of percentage of ownership points, Sam Hauser for me, Sean Jeezy. And on the FanDuel side of things, you don't have to go to anybody like that real cheap or anything in the flex spot. But I would still say Isaiah Jackson, particularly because of that defensive stat upside. One thing I will ask you in this matchup, any concern that Jalen Smith is the backup as opposed to Isaiah Jackson?
I thought about that a lot today. I ended up giving Jalen Smith 4 minutes just in case. I gave Kendall Brown 1 minute just in case there's like a planet where either of them step foot on the floor. It is a game 1, so it's kind of a feel out period. You'll see somebody maybe potentially play more than you think. Somebody will play less than you think. Welcome to game 1s. I don't think Oshae Brissett, Svi Mikhailiuk are 2 guys, and I'm going to be projecting for any minutes on the Boston side of things. But it completely shocked me to see, anybody out there. It makes sense. But I will say Xavier Tillman is out today, so maybe there's a chance that those 3 minutes, 4 minutes go to Oshae Brissett for whatever reason. But yeah, Xavier Tillman out for a personal reason. There's an opportunity maybe, or that ends up being a guy that we saw some first half, second quarter run at times for Xavier Tillman. Al Horford, he's old. He's not young. He's going to turn 38 during the season later on if it goes beyond 5 games. There's ways where you maybe see one of those guys step out on the floor. But Jalen Smith being the backup there, I did think about it for a while. Just put him in for 4 minutes. If you get to some shares of a 2K guy, I think he's an okay one to get to, and maybe it does end up being him instead of Jackson, but Jackson's played well. I think just with a true Al Horford, Luke Cornett out there, there's no reason that I would want to assume with the fantasy point per minute rate that I wouldn't want to get to Jackson over Jalen Smith.
Yeah, and Sean followed up. He said, I'm glad I asked this question because I didn't realize that Tillman was out until this. Yeah, so Sean, it was a good thing you left the super chat because that's how you found out that Xavier Tillman is out there. And Andrew Stiller in chat says, whoa, Tillman is out. Starting over.
Personal reason. I don't think Underdog tweeted it out, but it was something. Let me double check my source because I don't want to say anything that I'm incorrect about. Celtics, Xavier Tillman.
Yeah, if you go to the NBA injury report, here are all the players that are listed out.
His father passed away.
It's a 1-game NBA slate. Benedict Mathurin out because it's actually funny. They still haven't listed out within illness on the injury report as well. Anyway.
Or his shoulder Mathurin, is more
right
like
shoulder injury. It says illness/right shoulder injury. Porzingis is out. And then we've got Xavier Tillman. He is out due to personal reasons like Eric had referenced before. Now, for a 1-game slate, it matters a little bit. I mean, it matters for somebody like Sean who is considering potentially playing Xavier Tillman in a lineup. Yeah, definitely don't want to play a guy who's out, but you never know. Does that mean that Luke Cornett plays 2 extra minutes? And maybe that's the difference in between somebody winning a solo showdown slate or something like that. But Eric, Nuke of the night. I know it's a little bit weird, different of a setup here on a 1-game slate, but what are you going with? Who's the Nuke of the night? What's going to differentiate some of your lineups today?
I love getting to 1 Miles Turner. I think this is a really good. Now we're doing the graphic. Never mind.
I didn't know that Mike had access to the graphic.
There it goes. There we go.
My bad, Mike. I didn't know you had the animation there, or else I would have saw a little bit.
There we go. And now we're doing other stuff. Here we go. I am in love with Miles Turner for this initial beginning of the series. I think there's going to be a feel out period, but the guy shot the ball really, really well against the Knicks. I'm not saying he's going to shoot it nearly 50% here from three and make it work, but I do think you look at the matchups on the floor. Drew Holiday, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. I think Al Horford, Miles Turner, probably in the best situation to succeed. Miles Turner, he's been around a 60th, 65th percentile defender, but he's up there in years. He's going to be playing 30 plus minutes here, not something that was necessarily expected or asked of him to do going forward. But with Kristaps Porzingis out, that's surely going to be the case. Maybe they just utilize him a little bit more on the Al Horford side of things. But even still, I love getting to Miles Turner here for this series. I think his price point is one that, again, 15% of my captain lineups and playing him and Isaiah Jackson. I have no problem playing the two together, getting to them in a bunch of lineups here, feeling pretty darn good about his opportunity in this series. Bet is 15.5 points prop. It's now gotten juiced. I know that, most people are betting overs and things of that nature, but I've got that as a pretty low number. It's moved to 16.5 at a couple of spots, or it's heavily juiced on the 15.5. Miles Turner, just from a raw scoring perspective, your nuke of the night.
With Al Horford, who of all the players that are starting that we could rely on to play like a decent amount of minutes, he's the one projected for the least amount of ownership. Al Horford, we've got, let's see, what is he showing? Yeah, ownership right around 17% in the flex spot for Al Horford. Nobody's going to play him in the captain spot either. But one thing that really stood out to me about the last closeout game between the Cavaliers and the Celtics is that we did get 35 minutes out of Al Horford. I don't expect that to be the norm going forward. It seems like they're only going to have to ride Horford for like 2 more games until Kristaps Porzingis comes back. So maybe that is reason that they could push Al Horford a little bit harder the next couple of games. But, really more important than anything to me is that he's in this price range that people aren't really getting to. And when you have somebody like Al Horford, who I typically don't like to play on full-size slate, even 2-game slates, I hardly have been playing Al Horford in the playoffs. But a 1-game slate, if you get a guy like Al Horford at 17% projected ownership with relatively secure minutes, I'm overweight to the field on Al Horford, Eric. I don't feel great about it because he's not the best fantasy producer, but I think the ownership warrants it.
He is a large stand for me, too. I like getting to both of those guys here today. Turner, Horford, and Isaiah Jackson, getting to quite a bit of him as well. But I'm with you. It's basically everything you just said, and I don't have a ton to add other than Al Horford. With Kristaps Porzingis expected to be back sooner rather than later, there's a chance that at 20.5%, you get more than the 33 minutes we're projected for, we're projecting him for, and you ride him 36, 37 minutes if need be. Luke Cornett, if he's not efficient out there, there's ways to potentially just rip him off the floor immediately and go back to Big Al, knowing that you got Porzingis coming back and Al Horford's minutes go back to mid-20s, low 20s. So I'm with you. I think they're both excellent plays.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Al Horford is the only starter in the game projected for less than 20% ownership.
Yep, 20.5 on the dot. Yeah, so he's like right there.
What are you doing with some of the other pay-up options in the game? Most notably, the one we haven't talked about is Tyrese Haliburton. He is the overall best fantasy player from the Indiana Pacers. He's had a weird postseason, though. He's been all over the place. Where one game, we got Tyrese Haliburton, who's really looking for a shot. Then you have him the next game. It's like, hey, we're midway through the third quarter. Tyrese Haliburton's only taken 3 shots. Sometimes it looks like he also is just looking for a shot, and he's not passing when he led the league in assists during the regular season. How are you handling Haliburton in Showdown today? Because he's fairly popular coming off some of the games he had against the Knicks. He's not, Jason Tatum popular or anything like that, but he is one piece of this game we haven't really talked about yet.
Oh, my mic just ended up flipping out there. Let me double check. There it comes back. All right. I'm with you. I think that Tyrese Haliburton's a tough one to get a gauge on. We've seen games where he looked awesome, games where he hasn't. I have 15% of him as well in that captain spot. So again, kind of in line with where I want to be there. Utility, I'm rated at 32%. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing with him, but this is a no doubt nightmare matchup for him going up against Drew Holiday, Derek White, and company. So I'm all right getting to Tyrese Haliburton. He is a great fantasy producer. He's looked better and healthier. That is generally a plus. I don't know how to quantify that with data, but I do know that Tyrese Haliburton is now also sharing the floor with TJ McConnell, which is an interesting deal where I think the more minutes McConnell plays, it'll eventually strip away from Haliburton in the playoffs. But it is a really fascinating thing to see where the ownership lands on some of these guys, because at 10-point dogs, you can't spend up for absolutely everybody. And I do think people will strongly prefer getting to Tatum. So maybe we see reduced ownership on Tyrese Haliburton, but I very highly doubt it. I'm happy to just kind of have him in 15%, 32%, just less than half of my lineups, but making a decent enough stand on captain where I don't think I'll get completely burned by a ceiling game.
Yeah, I'm about 1.5x the ownership of Haliburton in the captain spot relative to the field, where he's projected for single digit ownership. And then he's also in about half my lineups in the utility spot there / flex, whatever the hell we're calling it. So Tyrese Haliburton, he is somebody who I personally am an overweight to, and I have him in a little bit more than half of my lineups for today's slate. And a big reason why that is the case is I'm underweight to the field on Haliburton for all the reasons. I'm underweight to the field on Tatum for all the reasons we talked about at the top of the show, where it's just very difficult to build unique lineups with Jason Tatum, who's projected to be in nearly in all of the field's lineups. And then if you have lineups that don't have Jason Tatum, you've got salary to spend. It just kind of naturally ends up going to Tyrese Haliburton, who also isn't all that popular in that captain spot. So Haliburton, a way that I like to differentiate some of my multiplier spots there. Eric, are there any other players that are in this game that are meaningful to your lineups for any particular reason?
For any particular reason, I'm going through my exposures here. Obi Toppin, I have a little bit of. Again, I'm not sure what these minutes
while we
look.
talk about Toppin there, I'm well underweight to the field to him. I've been underweight to the field to him in a lot of these recent games. And it's really just because of how popular he's projected for nearly 30% ownership today. And he's really relying on foul trouble, because if you do get Obi Toppin playing against the Celtics like a normal rotation, you're probably getting, like 17, 18 minutes out of him or something like that. And he's an okay, but not a great fantasy producer. So I think he's over-owned in this spot. And if you are going to be higher on, say, like Miles Turner, I think it makes sense to be underweight to the field on Obi Toppin. He had some games where he played bigger minutes against the Knicks, where either Miles Turner got into foul trouble or Pascal Siakam. But yeah, so for Toppin at his ownership, I am going to be underweight to the field. So that is something that's notable that I'm, let's see, is he the player that I'm of all the players in the flex spot, I'm most underweight to Obi Toppin, project for nearly 30% ownership there, and I have under 10.
I'm with you. I can't really get there at that ownership. I know that there'll be people who say, "Oh, he's been excellent." Yeah, he's played good basketball against the Knicks and company, and let's see it against Tatum. Let's see it against some of the bigs there. I'm very, very fascinated to see how the bigs rotation pans out here from Indy, but I'm pretty positive that Obi Toppin is over-owned based on his ownership right now.
Any other bench guys that are making their way into your lineups for today?
Let's see. Isaiah Jackson, that's kind of the big notable stand. Again, it's so weird to see 15-ish% ownership on him. I don't quite understand that one. Last guy to maybe talk about is Luke Cornett. If we look at this being a split with Al Horford, no, Al Horford only plays 32, 33 minutes. There's maybe a ceiling for Luke Cornett to come out, stretch the floor, shot the ball pretty efficiently. I'm just not in love with it. I'm not sure if you have any.
You said Luke Cornett, correct?
Yes, sir.
I've got 13% of him.
That's good enough for me.
Yeah, he's projected for 10% ownership, so a little bit overweight there. I do think he's one of the other players. Him and Sam Hauser, probably the two guys that benefit the most from a blowout situation. You combine the idea that these guys are going to be part of the rotation normally and could also play some blowout run, also the price points on them. So Cornett and Sam Hauser, those are the two cheapy Celtics off the bench that I'm looking at for potential blowout scenario. No kinds of crazy exposure. Like I said, 13% Luke Cornett worth shots, but I'm not going to be, building my lineups around him or anything like that.
Totally. We got two exotic plays of the night that are both fantastic. I like both on their fantasy score for pick six today. If you're inclined into such things, 17.5 fantasy points for Pritchard, 21.5 for McConnell. But from a DFS perspective, pretty flat, a little bit underweight to Pritchard.
Yeah, we've got McConnell right around 20% projected ownership. I'm slightly overweight to him. And then let's see, where was Peyton Pritchard? Pritchard 27%, slightly underweight to him. So it's like I've got the amount of Peyton Pritchard I have is TJ McConnell's projected ownership, and the amount of TJ McConnell I have is Peyton Pritchard's projected ownership.
Good stuff. Let's see here.
Yeah, Mike's running the exotic play of the night animation up there. It's going to be hard with some of these because just the way that the series sets up, it would be every other day we have to talk about TJ McConnell, Luke Cornett, Peyton. There just aren't other guys. These exotics, they don't grow on trees, Eric.
Apparently they do. They come off the bench. There's like a tree, pine riding the bench. There's a joke there somewhere. I can't find it right now.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to do because like I said, there's only a few guys for us to choose from, and most of them aren't super pertinent to the series. So we just have to be going to the same guys every single time. So we're about to be wrapping up here in just a few seconds before we get to lock. Any final thoughts on the slate here, Eric? Just a 1-game slate, whether it's a potential bet you have or anything else along those lines.
Miles Turner, 15.5 points plus 1.5 threes. I do think them trying to stretch the floor, having Miles Turner just continue the hot shooting he's had. I'm not a big hot streaks guy, but there's no doubt that in these playoffs, now that the rotations are kind of locked in, you know what his minutes are going to be. He's been staying out of foul trouble. Miles Turner, I think this is a really good series for him, and somebody that I'm going to be early to the party on, just betting some of his props, and hopefully we can get it done so that, next time around it's 17.5, 18.5. You just want to be early to the party in these series. I think a really good opportunity for him to knock down some shots.
All right, guys, the game is going to be starting eventually. We're going to go on over to playback. I'm going to put the game on a screen. You going to stick around for a little bit, Eric? Or
yeah, I'll stick around for a little bit. I've got some stuff I got to do, but I got about a half hour in me.
Cool. Same here. I've got a family dinner. It's a big meatball night. My sister, who's staying in my house, she's gonna be starting. Yeah, she's going to grad school later in the week. So we got big family meatball night. But yeah, we'll head on over to playback. We'll watch the game for a little bit until dinner's ready for me, and Eric's got his other stuff to do. So guys, head on into playback. If you wouldn't mind, Mike, could you drop that playback link into the YouTube chat, which I see you're on right there. See you guys over in playback. Have a good night if you guys are leaving. Don't leave. Come join us in playback. Peace out.